UFC lovers? It's your girl Shantell with the Victory Room, and I'm taking some time from my communing with nature to discuss what I think are the top 3 fighters from the UFC for 2023. So, how did we even get to talking about kind of the top fighters? How do you sort of have some criteria for them given different divisions, different fights, all that good stuff? So for me, when I'm looking at a fighter, I'm really looking at 4 major things. I'm looking at activity. So are you fighting a lot? Are you doing 1 fight a year? I'm looking at dominance. So when you're fighting and winning, how are you actually going about winning those fights? I'm looking at the storyline. So what was kind of the media hype about it? What was kind of the narrative going into to some of your fights? And then I'm looking at your accomplishments. So are you beating really high caliber fighters? Are you winning belts, things like that? Are you a double champ? So all of that's kind of going into how I think through my top fighters for the year. So let's kick us off with number 3. This guy is Leon Rocky Edwards. He has really shown up in 2023 and has arrived as a champion. So he left 2022 with the knockout kick that was heard around the world against the Hall of Famer with Kamaru Usman. Now, obviously, that was a lucky shot, and it was at the end of the fight, and all of these things. And up until then, Usman was winning, and so Leon really had to make a statement in 2023, and he did that. He won the next fight against Usman relatively dominantly. I think, of course, it was more of a back and forth, and there was no knockout, of course. But he still won that fight, and I think really showed that he deserved to be the true champ for the welterweights. And then he finishes it off with a highly, highly hyped fight against Colby Covington. So much that was about Colby coming back, and how if there was no Usman, Colby would be the big guy. And Colby looked like he shouldn't be in the ring. And Leon was actually very John-esque in that he said, I'm going to beat you at your own game. Like, you're good on the ground. Guess what? I'm going to take you to the ground. We're going to wrestle. We're going to grapple and see who comes out on top. And he really got the win over Colby. He made it look easy. And so I think Leon has arrived into his championship era. He's moving into being super surgical and super precise, and I love that for him. So Leon, keep it up, keep it moving. I think the only thing I would look for him in 2024 is to show even more dominance in his fights. So, we want you to continue winning. That's the most important thing. But show me a little more dominance. I want to see some more knockouts. I want to see a lot of times where, it's clear that you're winning the fight and you have it in hand. But all in all, great job, Leon. That's number 3 on the list. Number 2 for the top fighters for 2023 is none other than Jon Bones Jones. So Jon, of course, is a GOAT amongst GOATs, but I can think of no bigger storyline in 2023 than Jon coming back after a 3-year hiatus. And all we could say is we don't know what he's going to look like. We don't know if he's going to be able to move up to that heavier division and be as deadly as he has been. And this is someone who has a legendary status in MMA. So it was a huge risk for him to come back and potentially lose on that stage. This is a guy who literally has the most wins in UFC history and has done 13 title defenses. So to come back and attempt to win against a guy in Cyril Gane, who's an amazing fighter, very technical, someone who's in his prime, and to come back and win right out the gate with a submission, it was an amazing, amazing fight. The only reason why I ding Jones a little bit is because, of course, he got injured and was only able to have that one fight. But wow, what a fight it was. Dominant. And number 1, the top fighter for me in the UFC in 2023 is Alex Pereira. It's hard to think of a better run in recent history in the UFC. Alex Pereira's narrative was so much centered around coming to fight Izzy. And so what the narrative was he's this big hulking guy. He's honestly too big to be at 185. He just goes and uses brute strength and deadly kickboxing in order to win. So most of us painted him as very one-dimensional. And then he goes and beats Izzy like he said he would do. But then the narrative is, well, you literally came to the UFC to beat Izzy, so of course you're trained and ready for that. And then after he got the belt, he ends up getting knocked out by Izzy in 2022. And so now there's a big question of what is Pereira going to do next? And I've always said Pereira needed to distance himself from Israel. He needed to have his own narrative, his own story, his own journey. And that's what really he set out to do. He moves up to 205 and really says, hey, I'm going to take on the biggest and the baddest. Being able to fight Jan, who had actually beat Izzy, was a huge moment for him. And even though it was a split decision, I think it wasn't as close as maybe the decision would have you believe. And then he's now, through a lot of turn of events, right in line for a title shot against Yuri Prochazka, who is an amazing fighter, who was the champion of the division before getting injured, is coming back. And so now we're saying, well, how are you going to perform against the best of the best? And, folks who are similar in size to you. And now you're with the big boys. And you can't just rely on, brute strength or kickboxing to get a win. And what did he do? He dominated the fight. Majority of the time, there was not a time where we thought that he wouldn't get the win, and he did in an amazing fashion. And so for Alex, I'm so excited that he's come into 2023 really distancing himself from everything he did with Izzy, and now he's the top guy. And so you can't really build a better story than that for 2023, for someone to come in very quickly in the UFC and get both belts in two different divisions, even though of course he lost one, but to come into a heavier division and win there as well, it gets no better than that. And now he's in a position where he says, I'm the champ. You all decide who wants to come and fight me. And I think there could be an opportunity for Izzy to come back, move up, and ultimately say he wants to have a go again at Pereira. But even then, it's on Alex's terms. So that's my fighter. Those are my top 3 fighters of the year. Who else would you include or not include on this list? And stay tuned for part 2 for some honorable mentions.